I would like to introduce our next speaker. Audrey Queckboerner has run for office as both a Republican and as a Constitution Party candidate. And I'd like to bring her up here and have her address the crowd. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here today. There's so many things you could be doing back at home, but instead you chose to be here. I want to start off with saying that, Andy Horning has been threatening to get off Facebook for some time now. And I asked him, what's it going to take for you to stay? He said, I am tired of people sitting behind the computer. It's so easy to do that. I want to see people get out on the streets and make their voices known. So yeah! I hope there's enough people here today that he's going to stay on Facebook for us, because I so appreciate his wisdom. Now, last week when I had considered about coming here today, I had asked Andy, who do you have lined up for speakers? Oh, it didn't take him but a second to say, why, do you want to speak? I was like, no, not really. Public speaking is not really my thing. However, I haven't been able to sleep the last couple nights. I've just been restless with this message I feel like I'm supposed to bring. He's like, go for it. And that message is, be encouraged. Be encouraged. We have so many things coming at us, assaults to our civil liberties. I could stand here and read a whole list, and I don't need to do that because you all know what they are. But however, the battle is, we have to keep fighting. I got involved with in politics back in 2008 when Ron Paul ran for office. I know some of you have been in this fight a lot longer than that, and I applaud you for that. I ran for office twice. The first time I ran as a Republican, I ran against a 34-year incumbent who is a moderate at best, does nothing but take up a front row here in this building and likes that position, but yet does nothing to fight for liberty. And I'm like, I've had enough. I have to do something. So as a homemaker with no college education, I decided I'm going to step up. I'm going to run. We polled 27% in a three-way race, which for a first-time runner running against a long-term incumbent, the Republican leadership at my county party was amazed that I did that well. Well, it just showed how much my husband and I worked our bottoms off to try and reach people. We had very little help, very little finances. And after that, and after I lost, I was so discouraged. And I said, I really don't want to do this anymore. It's kind of hopeless. Well, one of the most frustrating things that I have experienced, besides running for office, is being involved in a political party that is full of corruption, and there's no reforming it. And I'm talking about the Republican Party. I did that for several years. So after I got fed up, I left. I joined the Constitution Party. As we came back from their national convention, my husband was convinced that I needed to run again. And I'm like, are you insane? That is the craziest thing to do. You know what happened last time? I don't want to burn ourselves out again. And he's like, no, we need to set an example for other people in our party. We need to, we were looking at the primary results, and she had done poorly, and we're just like, no, we stand a really good chance. I said, you know what? You go on, you give me the signatures needed to get me on the ballot, and I'll do it. Boy, it took him no time, and he got it done. I'm like, okay, I'm obligated now. The thing that set me apart this time when I ran was the first time, I just felt like I couldn't reach enough people in my district. I thought, they're not hearing my message of standing on the Constitution. So this time, thankfully, a lot of people in our party gave me financial support. I was able to send out enough postcards with my message, and I thought, you know what? This is great. For the first time, they're going to see a candidate that is standing on the Constitution. I feel victorious. I know we're going to do well. And I ended up polling 8% that time. And my husband came home, and I've never seen my husband so discouraged in his life. He never gets that way. And he's like, Audrey, I have talked to people all day at the polling places. They want to know if you have an R or a D in front of your name. That is all they care about. They do not care about doing their homework. So basically, this is what the voters did that day. I do not care about the Constitution. I do not care about liberty. I do not care about freedom. I do not care about the 10th Amendment. What they care about is voting for the status quo. What they care about is pushing an R or D button. And I was so discouraged. You know, and my husband was like, you know, you're right. And I said, that's it. I don't want anything to do with this anymore. I'm done with politics. I've given 150% after the last 4 years into this, and I'm not doing it anymore. It's insane. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So I said, I'm not doing anything else. You know, it wasn't long. I had somebody in my local town who has got some influence, and he wants me to run for town council. Jerry Titus is like, oh, Audrey, let's get you involved in the Freedom Farm. And I'm like, no, I'm done. I've had it. The voters have made their choices. You know, this country is going to get exactly what it deserves. There's no way it can't by the way the voters keep choosing what they do. So I'm like, I'm getting away from it. Well, that lasted short of about 3 months. And you know why? Because daggone it, I love my country. I hate what I see happening here.
We need to!
I can't stand back and be silent. I can't.
And we won't!
I want my Constitution back!
That's you, Mike Pence, and any other senator, dirty Republican, or anyone that wants to stand against this Constitution, this country. We Marines, we military, we Americans will not take it.
That's right.
Hear those words. We are prepared.
Please be encouraged. You know, I feel like I put things out on my Facebook page all the time. I'm talking about the issues. I'm seeing what's going down here at the State House. You know, I don't see anybody standing up for the 10th Amendment. I don't see anybody standing up to pro tem Senate Leader David Long and saying, no, the Supreme Court is not the final authority in this nation. The 10th Amendment is. Let's get back to the Constitution. So I am speaking out. I feel as a Christian it is my duty to expose the deeds of darkness, as the scriptures tell me. So that is my mission now, and I'm sharing it, and I don't know who is out there listening. And when I least expect it on my Facebook page, I have a friend share a video. I have another friend say, Audrey, I just read that article, and I'm sitting here shaking my head. And I'm like, thank you. And they're like, why are you thanking me? Because you're giving me feedback. At least I know somebody is out there listening. And whether you feel like it or not, there are people that are out there listening to you. You may never hear it. There may be just a very small minority, but people are listening to our message. So keep up the fight. I want to conclude by reading the segment of this article written by 2008 Constitution presidential candidate Chuck Baldwin. It really encouraged me, spoke to me when I first read it, and I hope it will encourage you. Yes, it's geared toward a Christian audience, but I think the principles in it can be applied to anybody. Let's settle one thing first. God has never used a majority to achieve anything substantive or revolutionary. It has always been a tireless, committed, and courageous remnant that he has used to accomplish things considered noteworthy and lasting. You know, any dead fish can swim downstream. Christ used a handful of apostles to turn this world upside down. In Jewish history, it was Gideon's 300, David's 300, Nehemiah's remnant, small bands of men here and there that God used to defeat mighty enemies and raise the banner of victory. In our own history, the men who fought against the powerful British Army never comprised a number larger than 3% of the whole. The brave men whom we refer to as the Americans' founding fathers numbered less than 200. In fact, in most instances, if not all, the majority has either contributed little to the cause of liberty or has even been tools of opposition and hindrance to the principles of liberty. It has always been a relatively small number of people who have turned the tide of history. While we're at it, let's just define what a, quote, remnant is. A remnant primarily connotes pieces of cloth that have been cut off from a garment and thrown away. When we talk about a remnant, we're talking about those who are regarded as leftovers, cast-offs, rejects, discards. They are the ones who don't fit in with the mainstream. And they certainly do not fit in with these mainstream non-profit government corporations called churches. That is for sure. Jewish, church, and American history are all redundant with examples of how it was the remnant misfit society that changed the world. I ask you, just how mainstream was Abraham? How mainstream was Noah? What about Moses, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel? America's founders were called traitors, renegades, rabble, peasants. Had Great Britain defeated the American colonies during our war for independence, history books today would refer to George Washington, Patrick Henry, and Sam Adams in terms more despairingly than they depict Jesse James, John Dillinger, or Bonnie and Clyde. This country we call the United States of America is the product of a remnant's insatiable search for a land of liberty. Before the people we call the Pilgrims ever crossed the Atlantic Ocean in that little ship, the Mayflower, they had wandered from country to country within Europe looking for that city on a hill. Finally, after running out of options in Europe, they dared to risk their lives crossing a vast ocean in their quest to find liberty. Then once here, they still journeyed throughout the territories that eventually became the colonies, then the states, searching for freedom. Roger Williams and his fellow Baptists were responsible for founding the state of Rhode Island after being persecuted and driven out of Massachusetts for his unorthodox, to them, beliefs. The Baptist preacher John Leland was the man responsible for the First Amendment being added to the U.S. Constitution after witnessing the persecution, the beatings, and imprisonments of many of his preacher brethren for their politically incorrect preaching. But one thing is for certain, America's political, spiritual, and financial leaders are for the most part a rebellious house. They have rebelled against truth, against honor, against integrity, against character, and yes, even against the principles and oracles of natural law and constitutional government. And another thing is also certain, God will not be mocked forever. If God would judge the rebelliousness of the Old Testament house of Israel, a people called the apple of his own eye, if he would judge the house of Herod, he is duty-bound to judge the rebelliousness within that house called white. And while he's at it, I doubt he will spare the thieves, the thugs, and the criminals in the houses of Congress, the CFR, the Bilderbergers, and the Federal Reserve.
Yeah!
And he goes on, but I'll stop here. But I just want to say all that to just encourage you, keep up the fight. Keep up the good work. You don't know who's listening. Be encouraged. You're not alone. Remember the words of John Quincy Adams. Duty is ours, but results are God's. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. I guess I don't have an answer yet for whether I'm going to stay on Facebook or not, so I don't know. I don't like that medium. I wish I didn't have to do it. But one of the things I do want to underline about what she said was that, you know, it really doesn't take that many people to make big changes. If you remember anything about our Founding Fathers' history, it's only about a quarter of them on July 4, 1776, who wanted to be anything other than British citizens. You know, it was a fairly small minority that started all of this off. And if you think about how few people are actually running the government now, it's not even the people that we elect. I mean, they're just sort of employees. It's not the bureaucracy, they're employees. The people who are running the show, really, are very few in number. And don't kid yourself about what you guys represent. The fact that you guys showed up showed that you're the kind of people that matter to them. You know, they see seas of sheep. They see all kinds of numbers, and they can count on them on election day. They're always going to vote roughly the same way. You guys are the ones that stick out. If you do anything other than what they expect, you're something to be considered. You're something that now makes a difference. And don't kid yourself about what effect you can have in the short term. It's never been the case that because it took so long for us to get screwed up, that it takes a long time to set things right. We get exactly and only what we choose, exactly and only when we choose it. We can get what we want as soon as we want. We just have to build our numbers to a point where we're significant in an election. Maybe 20% of it. We only need 20%. Give me 20% of the people who are ready to vote different, and everything can change. I guarantee that.